Hi, I'm Selena, and I'm here from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm speaking with Bridget Heos, who is a children's book author, and she has written over 100 books for children. And I'm going to let her speak about what types of books she writes. And Bridget?
All right, so I write nonfiction and fiction for kids. I would say that my nonfiction often has a touch of whimsy to it, like my new book, Treemendous. The tree tells the story itself. So it adds a bit of suspense as the tree isn't sure if she'll become a tree while she's still an acorn. And then I write fiction that usually has some humor in it, like Triceratopposite, about a little dinosaur that always says and does the opposite of what his parents say.
Oh, that's wonderful. Um, what can readers expect from your newest book? Well, I know you have 4 books coming out this year.
Right. So Triceratopposite is, a character book. It has adorable illustrations by T.L. Macbeth, and it also teaches about opposites. So it has an educational component. Treemendous is a diary format, and it teaches how an oak tree grows. And so it also has an educational component, but both are just fun read alouds. They're very child friendly. I also have a new Mustache Baby book coming out, which I don't have a copy of yet. It's called Good Night Mustache Baby. It's book 5 in the series, and kids tend to enjoy the book. A lot of people think the book is for babies, but it has a baby audience, but also an older audience that goes up to about grade 5, I see when I visit schools. And finally, I have Santa Jaws coming out, which is my first rhyming book, illustrations by Galia Bernstein, and it's really beautifully done by her. And it's obviously a Christmas book about a shark.
Shark. Okay, is this a Santa shark?
Yes, so it's the shark Santa, and he's a great white shark, but there's also different types of sharks in it. So it's a great book for shark or Christmas lovers.
Wonderful. So I'd like you to take one of your books and well, actually, what do you think draws readers to these kinds of books?
Well, I think that I try to have my books have a friendly voice, an upbeat voice, the kind of book that they may just smile at. It's not always laugh out loud funny, but they can smile at and just have a sense of well-being based on it being an upbeat book.
So are your books more for children to read or for parents to read for children?
Mine are mostly for parents to read to children, or for older kids to read on their own. They usually have quite a bit of vocabulary in them. So yeah, they're more read alouds, I would say.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you to choose like one book and let me know what was the inspiration for it.
Okay, I'll choose Treemendous. So this book was inspired by the nature that's in the city. I live in Kansas City, and in our old house, it was a very city neighborhood. Sidewalks, busy street. There was a school across the street, a parking lot, and there was still a lot of nature in the neighborhood. And one year we had this bumper crop of acorns. So my daughter and I would walk around and collect the acorns just for something to do. And suddenly this duck family moved in, and we would we'd turn around and see a duck, which was unusual because it wasn't that kind of neighborhood. It was the city, and there wasn't a pond nearby. And then the ducks laid eggs, they had a nest, and it was just really special because my daughter, that was her favorite animal. So it was really kind of heaven sent, and we got to watch them develop. And then I learned that ducks eat acorns as one of their foods. So I thought, well, maybe that's what brought them to our neighborhood. And so I wanted to write sort of a tribute to the acorns and the oak trees that grow in the city. This tree actually grows in the forest, but that's what brought it about.
Oh, wonderful. So what were the steps that you took to bring it from initial inspiration to the final product?
Well, with a fact-based book like this, the idea always comes from nature, but I don't know what I'm looking at, so it requires a lot of research. And so reading books about trees, reading articles about the specific tree, the red oak, and just making sure that every fact, while it's kind of a general story about how a tree develops, is specific to the red oak so that we're being consistent, and offering information to the illustrator. With fiction books, I don't interact a lot with the illustrator. They use their own imagination and we're kind of kept separate. But with nonfiction books, you really have to talk to the illustrator to share with them the research you did and the scientific aspect of it.
Oh, that actually goes right into my next question, which is what kind of research went into writing this book? And you kind of answered a little bit of it.
Yes, I tend to go overboard with research a little bit for nonfiction because that's what kind of makes the story flow. I know that if I don't have all the information I need, I'm going to hit roadblocks as I tell the story. So it's good if I can have a general base of information, and then I have to gather more specific facts later. But I really try to understand the subject matter before I ever start writing.
Now, what is your favorite research story from all of your books that you've written?
Well, one thing that happened, I wrote a book for older kids, a YA nonfiction book called Blood, Bullets, and Bones, about the history of forensic science. And there was a story in the book from, I think, the 1920s about a supposed murder that took place. And there was a trial and the husband was found guilty for the wife's murder. And that's how I wrote the story in the book. And I was fact checking the whole book for updates, more for the newer murders, but I fact checked that one too. And there was an update on the case where a present day scientist used DNA evidence to prove that the body used in the trial was not only possible that it was the woman they said, based on it wasn't a family match when he tested DNA of the family, but it wasn't even a woman's body, it was a man's DNA. And so it completely overturned, what I knew about the case, and I was able to write the story much differently.
Wow, that's fascinating. And wow. So what was the biggest challenge in writing and putting out your newest book, Treemendous?
For Treemendous, it was with nonfiction books for kids, especially picture books, it's finding that balance between providing the information needed in terms of the curriculum, but not going into so much detail that it bogs down the story and is more information than they need at that age level. And so it's just striking that balance, like introducing photosynthesis. The tree's talking about herself and now she's talking about photosynthesis. It can sound a little bit like, is the tree still talking? Now it sounds like a scientist. So finding that balance can be challenging.
I would imagine. What about for your Triceratopposite?
For my fiction books, my biggest challenge is always the plot and just deciding what's going to happen in the story, having the ending be both surprising but makes sense, all those plot things. I really like the nitty-gritty of revising, but in terms of coming up with a plot, it often takes me a long time to do that.
So do you prefer writing the characters rather than the plot?
Yes, I love figuring out the characters. That usually comes right away. Figuring out their voice, kind of the tone and the mood of the story. But then when I go to tell what happens, often I have to change it. I'll turn it in and say, oh, I got it right, hooray. And then I'll turn it in to the editor and they'll be like, this story does not make sense. And then I have to do it all over until finally, luckily they hold my feet to the fire until we get a plot that makes sense.
Great. What character in your books, all of your books basically, do you love or hate the most when you're writing?
One that I found that I loved is Beard Baby in the Mustache Baby series. And he was one of those characters that kind of took on a life of his own. So Mustache Baby is the star of the series, but Beard Baby often wins against Mustache Baby, and Beard Baby often takes on the leadership roles because I just found that's who he was presenting himself to be. And he's based a little bit on my husband, who's kind of seems very quiet and calm, but is actually very competitive. And so people don't realize until they're in the middle of a competition what his plans are. And so that's kind of how Beard Baby is, whereas Mustache Baby is more outwardly competitive, very in your face, emotional. And I like him too, but this one took on a life of his own. But whenever I try to name the book Beard Baby, they always say, well, it has to say Mustache Baby, because that's how people find it on the internet or in bookstores when they ask about it, which makes sense to me.
Okay. So what else can we expect from you in the near future?
Well, I'm working now on a series called Science Buddies, and it's a very young series. It would be for preschool to grade 2 or 3, and the science entities tell about themselves in simple forms. They're often science entities that have a hint of danger. So the first 3 in the series are a virus, which we know all about right now. And then a volcano and a tornado. And so there is a sense of danger in the stories, but also a sense of assuring, kids that scientists can monitor these things and are doing what they can to intervene. And so there's that aspect too.
Ah, that sounds fun. All right, now I have some questions for you about being a writer.
Okay.
What is your favorite part of being a writer and on the whole writing and publishing process?
Well, my favorite part is seeing how readers interact with the books. And I get to see that firsthand a lot because I go into so many schools. Before the pandemic and hopefully after, I would go to about 100 schools a year to present, because I think because I was able to present both about nonfiction and fiction, so they kind of get 2 for 1. And just seeing how the librarians share the books with them, and they'll sometimes do art projects or science or vocabulary projects, and it's exciting to see that they're finding the books helpful in some way to them.
Do you read the books to them?
I usually read aloud Mustache Baby, and we add sound effects, and then I tell them the process of writing. And the focus is to show them that their writing process of writing a draft, revising, writing a second draft is the writing process. Everyone uses it, and we use it because it works. And so that reinforces what their teachers are teaching them.
Ah, okay. What do you consider the most challenging part of the writing process, and how do you overcome that?
Well, for me, the challenging part is just deciding what happens in the story, coming up with sort of the what next after the idea. Like, say I have an idea of a baby with a mustache, that's not enough. It's the what next. So for Mustache Baby, the what next was, well, it'll be a good guy mustache and then it'll be a bad guy mustache. Well, that's the whole story. So that came about pretty easily, but oftentimes I'll have an idea based on like a title that has a pun in it or a character that I think the kids would like. And then it's like, what next? I don't know. And so it just kind of sits there for a while.
Okay. And what has been your favorite adventure during your writing career?
Well, when I go to the schools, I've gotten to see parts of the country that I'd never seen before. I'd never been to Texas before writing Mustache Baby. And with Texas, along with Massachusetts being such a state that has strong libraries, I go there a lot. And so I've gotten to go to South Texas along the Mexico border, West Texas, to cattle country and Austin and all these parts, and up to North Dakota. I went to a school in North Dakota that had 36 students K through 12. And they all ate their lunch in the same cafeteria out of a crock pot that one cafeteria lady made this meal in the crock pot for them. And they all ate that. They didn't bring their lunch, but because it was a home cooked meal every day. And so it's just, the adventure has been seeing the country, seeing these different schools. And that's been really fun for me.
Wow. And what has the greatest lesson been that you've learned thus far in your writing career?
I think what I've learned is just to see things as a story. And I think, that's something we're taught when we're young, because people take the time to tell children stories, and my family definitely did that. My mom would tell kind of cautionary tales, about why you wouldn't want to ever stay in the sun for too long, and they would just be outrageous. And my dad and my grandma would tell me true stories of growing up. And so I just was surrounded by stories. And then I think I kind of lost that idea for a while and would feel stuck or just not see the story in something. And then once I started writing again, I really started seeing, like, this is a story, and it's, this is the middle of a story, and it'll come to some sort of end, and then a new story will begin. And so I think that's a sense of hope, to look at life that way. And that's what I've gotten from writing children's books, which tend to be very hopeful, even when they're about something sad or scary.
So do you see stories in everything?
Yes, I would say so.
So you walk down the street and, oh, there's a story.
Right. Yeah. Like I see a slug going across the the sidewalk, and I think, what an amazing spirit, that slug just plugging away. It's going to take about 3 hours to get back to the grass. And yeah, I just think things like that are amazing.
That's the one thing that I learned at a conference with Jane Yolen, and she said there is a story in everything, and it's like,
Right.
oh yes, that's right.
Yes, I agree
Um,
with that.
so what let's see, what piece of advice would you want to share with other writers?
Well, I think, having a book come out or published is competitive. And what I think about is just to consider whether, a lot of people have a dream of maybe having a book published, but to just consider whether it's, sort of a dream or a dream in quotation marks. Like, I have dreams too that I don't work towards. So it's a dream. Like, I would have a dream of running a fast 5K, but I don't really do anything about it. And I think a real dream, the focus is on the work versus the end point. And you see the dream as more of like a spectrum, or not a spectrum, like a line versus a point. And if you're willing to really do everything along that line and be happy with wherever you end up, that's really is your dream. Versus if you're really only going to be happy if this one book gets published, and that may not be a good fit, because sometimes, like, some of my favorite books never get published, but I'm just happy to be a writer and to write whatever is available to write.
Mm-hmm. Are there any groups, clubs, or organizations that you'd recommend to other writers that have helped you with your career?
Yes, SCBWI is very helpful, and they're particularly their branches, because that's where you would find a critique group. Now, so much is available online that you can research to find agents and editors. And so if you can do some research, like find the books you like, and then figure out who their editor was or who the agent of that author is, then when you go to find an editor or agent, it may be a good fit for you if you write the same type things.
That's an excellent advice. Wow. Okay, now I have questions about you as a person.
Okay.
What is one thing that most people don't know about you?
Well, I exercise a lot and I'm in pretty good shape. And I think maybe people don't think that about me. I was climbing a mountain 2 days ago. And, I had my big sunglasses on and I don't look particularly fit. I just look like a mom climbing a mountain. And someone looked at me and was like, "Good job." I was like, "I can climb mountains."
That's a good thing. Excellent. Okay, my next question is, what question do you wish interviewers would ask you? And what would your answer be?
Oh, I don't know if I have an answer to that one. It seems like they always ask really good questions, and I may have to skip that one. I can't think of a new question. You guys think of all the questions.
Yeah, that's a hard one. I know a lot of the authors just don't know that one. Okay,
Right.
I'll skip that one. I'll skip that one. Next question is, what is or are your passions when you're not writing, and how do you make time for the hobbies and things that you love?
Well, I love exercise is something I love doing. I've always loved to exercise. It feels like makes me feel alive. So I always try to make time for that every day. And it's not one of those things I really have to make time for. It's something, well, I do have to make time for it, but it's important to me. So I usually do it. And then just trying to connect with my kids and spending time with them, whether it's something they need help with, like school, or just something that I know they enjoy. Like my daughter likes doing gymnastics, so just taking time to like hold her legs up when she does her handstands. And I think what I've done starting out, I wrote all the time, and I think I kind of went overboard, but it maybe was needed to make things happen as a writer. But now that I'm farther along, I really have hours that I write. And then when the kids are home from school, I don't really write during that time because it's just like a full-time job to do all the things that they need help with. So I say I make time for it by having office hours, basically.
That's a good thing. So you write like mom's hours, basically.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then in the summer, I can have my daughter go to camp, or if my sons are home, they can babysit her too. But I just don't want it to be that I'm writing around the clock, because it's just, I know there are writers who are so passionate about it that they write around the clock, which is great. But I see it as more of a job, honestly.
Yep. Okay. What does your writing space look like, and what do you need to have around you while you're writing or editing?
Well, it varies. I've never seemed to be able to accomplish having a office, an actual office. It's just hasn't been something that space has ever. I'll show you you'll laugh when you see my writing space right now. It is a weightlifting bench, which is not even mine, it's my son's. But this is where it's kind of a quiet area. So this is where I'm writing right now. And so I see it as more, not so much the space that I'm in, it's just the headspace that I need to get in. So when I'm writing, I carve out hours and I just let myself write. And if I think, oh, I was supposed to send that email, like, nope, I don't have to send it right now. And so it's just writing time when I write. And so I try to set aside like 3 to 5 hours where I can really focus on writing whenever I know I'm going to be writing or revising or researching.
Uh-huh. Do you have like any foods or drinks that you like to have with you when you're writing?
Well, if things are really, really getting serious, I'll do Reese's Pieces and a glass of milk. And if you see me with Reese's and a glass of milk, it's like, back away. Things are getting real here.
Okay. And when you're writing, do you prefer silence or music?
I usually do silence. If I'm doing busy work like emails, I usually have like a mystery going in the background. But if I'm actually writing or researching, I really like it to be quiet.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Um, and writers often have furry or feathered or otherwise non-human companions to help them with their work. And do you have any, and do they help or hinder you?
I have two. I have a dog named Snoopy and a cat named Bonnie. I wouldn't say they're particularly helpful, but they're very cute. So, I put up with them. No, I love them. But yeah, they don't really help me. I have thought about writing a story about them. I did write a story about my dog, but again, I haven't figured out the plot yet.
Ah, okay. Um, how important has the New England setting been to your work?
Um, for the like when I visit New England,
Yeah.
I do go to New England a lot because my husband's family lives there. I try to do school visits in New England every year. And then my daughter stays with my mother-in-law. With the shark book, I'm finally writing an ocean book. Um, I haven't written probably enough books about ocean life, although it is an interest of mine. And whenever we go to New England, I'm amazed by the wildlife in the oceans. And it seems like we're always kind of in estuary areas. And but I have noticed the difference in New England versus, and I think a lot of authors live in New England, like it's such a intellectual and artistic region of the country. And I've noticed like when I would read books as a kid being in Kansas City, there would be like a scene in the summer where the kids are all wearing jeans. And I would say, who wears jeans in the summertime? Because in Kansas City, it is so hot. Like you put your jeans away in the attic during the summer. You're not going to touch them. And then I went back to New England with my husband. I was like, oh, you have nice summers. You can wear jeans here. This
It
is amazing.
depends. It could get pretty hot and humid here
Right.
on some days, but yeah, we do wear jeans. Okay. And I have just two more questions for you. One is, where can people find your work aside from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester? And I'm going to put a little plug in here. You can buy Bridget's work at Annie's. You can call us at 508-796-5613, or you can send us email at orders@anniesbooksworcester.com. And we can order Bridget's books, at least the ones that are available. And where else could you find your books?
Well, just like Annie's Bookstop, any local bookstore, if they don't have my books, you can ask them to order them. They're available at online stores. Your library probably has one of my books. If you look up my name, you'd probably be able to find at least one of my books in your local library or your school library. A lot of times when I visit schools, the librarian will say, I didn't know you wrote these books that were in our library, which I understand because some of the nonfiction, it's more about the subject really than the author. So yeah, my books are in a lot of places and I'd love for people to check them out.
Okay. And we would love people to check them out too.
Yes.
And how can we follow your work and share your awesomeness?
Well, my website is www.authorbridgetheos.com. I'm on Instagram as Bridget Heos, and I have a Facebook author page, Author Bridget Heos, and on Twitter, Bridget Heos. So I try to just kind of post updates in those places so you can see when my new books are coming out. And if you'd like to have me come to your school, I love coming to Boston because then my daughter can see her grandparents.
That would be wonderful. We'd love to have you.
Yes,
It would be great when this pandemic is hopefully over.
right.
Um, yes, definitely. We'd love to have you come to the store.
Thank you. I'd
So
love that.
yeah. So yeah, definitely. So we will keep in touch.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and we appreciate your taking the time to be with us today.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for
Okay.
having me.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.